the governor of Louisiana. Now, of course, Jeff Landry, Governor Landry. As we get going this morning, Jack Heath, J-Dog on the board, 6 Hour Studios. Happy New Year 2025. We are in, we are starting, we are gearing up. Buckle up. Thanks for joining us this morning. Got a packed show for you. Plenty to talk about. Hope you had a good New Year's. But let's get right back to it. Before we get to that, good morning, New Hampshire. Good morning, Maine. Good morning, New England. Good morning, worldwide. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa. Play the pulse of NH, and thousands of you are each morning beyond our news talk network. We have some windy weather in store for us today in the region. Wind gusts could be up to 40 miles per hour. It's going to be clear but windy, so a breezy, windy Thursday. And let's get back to the news talk. Really, everything's hovering around this investigation in New Orleans, terrorist investigation. Just a terrible, terrible story. And the Sugar Bowl is set to kick off this afternoon. You just heard Governor Landry talking about that, trying to get some sense of back to normal after the tragedy of New Year's Eve morning there in terms of what happening on Bourbon Street, the French Quarter of New Orleans, and the terror suspect. Now, let's get back to the Sugar Bowl. Georgia Notre Dame fans have been there, obviously, because when these bowl games happen, J-Dog, like we just yesterday, the Rose Bowl, the Peach Bowl earlier with Texas and Arizona, and of course Ohio State beating Oregon. These fans go there for days ahead of time. You know, the game may be all of a sudden, but they postpone the game. It's set to go this afternoon. The Attorney General of New Orleans is thinking they should postpone it. The governor does not. It's pretty clear it's going to happen this afternoon, J-Dog, and obviously security in and around. They're used to that. They've had the big Super Bowl games there, but this is. Yeah, it's going to be there next month, but this is this afternoon, J-Dog, right? Georgia, Notre Dame, and the Sugar Bowl. And then the other questions are, in Las Vegas, it's pretty hard to say that there is not a connection. It's beyond coincidence. In Las Vegas, that Tesla Cybertruck explosion outside of the Trump Hotel, is it linked to the New Orleans terrorist attack? And one would have to say, with radicalized terrorists out there, is obviously it's a Tesla. You think of Musk, you think of Trump, the Trump Hotel in Vegas, and the timing of it. One would think that it is. But the other problem in New Orleans, J Dog, with the Sugar Bowl this afternoon is: are there more suspects involved beyond the one suspect? Yes, Army veteran, but ISIS flag in the vehicle, rented vehicle, the pickup truck going into the crowd, and then having explosives and the weaponry to hurt more. He was killed by police, but are there more suspects? Are there more suspects out there in and around New Orleans or other American cities? So there's certainly what's happening in New Orleans has got the attention of the nation. And this afternoon, it looks like the Sugar Bowl is set to happen. And I would think that the security in and around the Sugar Bowl, and they're used to it there with the big games, will be rather unprecedented. So a lot going on to try and get your eyes and your head, your brain, your thoughts around this. But let's get back to some basics here. J-Dog, some terrific games yesterday. And with a Manchester, New Hampshire connection, Ryan Day, the head coach of Ohio State, it's pretty hard to think about let's just say his job security just got a whole lot better yesterday in that first half, just getting that huge lead against the number one team, undefeated, the Ducks from Oregon, and Ohio State was all over them in the first half, building up that lead, and sort of a similar score to their win over Tennessee. So now they're 2-0. Ohio State is now in the semifinals. They'll play Texas, I believe, next Thursday, and they're a game away from the national championship, which I believe, J-Dog, will be January 20th. This from a coach who was doing well, but had that terrible record against rival Michigan. And he's now from Manchester, New Hampshire. Ryan Day, of course. A lot of folks know of him. And you got Chip Kelly up in the booth from New Hampshire, coaching at UNH in the past and living in the Seacoast. So it's pretty good New Hampshire connection. But Ohio State looked pretty darn good yesterday. I was going to ask you, it's in Texas. Wow. Wow. I don't know if you saw that game against Arizona, but wow. Wow, what a game. Went to overtime, of course, and whoever number 4 is on the Arizona Sun Devils, he's gotta be drafted. Wow, what a heart, what a player. He looked like a, halfback, but he could threw the ball. Arizona, yeah, I mean, he's just amazing. I can't I'll think of his last name, but he reminded me of a young he looked like a young Wes Welker, just had that intensity, but at one point, he was throwing up on the sidelines. He was so dehydrated, he couldn't even catch his breath because on every play, he was getting the first downs of the plays, and oh, great game. All right, as we get going though, at least 15 were killed in that New Orleans terror attack. And if you've been down into the French Quarter of Bourbon Street, you know the area. It's depicted in a lot of films. The FBI is saying, and this raises concerns. This raises concerns. They do not believe that the terrorist suspect was acting alone. The FBI this morning does not believe that he was acting alone. They believe he had accomplices. Who they are, where they are, who knows? And there's concern. You have a very outspoken Louisiana attorney general, and she wants more answers from the feds. The governor's just trying to get on with business there. That big game this afternoon. And J Dog, when that stadium indoors is full, what's the capacity for that Sugar Bowl this afternoon? Is it at least? Then you think of outside the stadium, J Dog, in the area. Again, people that come to New Orleans, if you look at the Georgia following and the Notre Dame following, it's not just and you looked at the if you looked at the Ohio State game yesterday, you could see the sea of red at the Rose Bowl, and it wasn't for roses. Those are Ohio State fans that travel. They go there. They yeah, they go there. Oregon, same thing. They go there early. They stay in hotels. They go out to dinner. They're in the area. So outside the stadium this afternoon, there has to be an additional 20 or 30 or 40,000 people in the area, and that's for the game this afternoon, which at this point is going on as scheduled. And what's the time, J Dog? This afternoon. That was postponed from last night. I think it was supposed to be 8:45 or something last night. They postponed it because of the victims. Now, there's also more people injured in the hospital in New Orleans that are at least 10 patients that are probably in pretty serious condition, but the investigation is going to continue in terms of that terror suspect not acting alone. Okay, and that's the Sugar Bowl. All right, hey Alexa, hey Google, play the Pulse of an H here locally. Again, hope you had a good New Year's yesterday and a good New Year's Day. As we get into today, we have some wind advisory. Some places, for example, the North Country, it could be pretty gusty up in the mountains, but these gusts locally, seacoast, could be in the 20, 25, 30 mile per hour range, up to 45 miles per hour in some places. They're even talking about the possibility, but we don't have a lot of snow or ice on the lines, of some isolated power outages. We're going to have an update on all of the above as we get going on this Thursday morning. As I said, J Dog, it's hard with these holidays in the middle of the week to, you get all mixed up with your calendar. It feels like a Saturday, and today feels like a Monday, but it's Thursday, of course, shortened week with New Year's. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Eighth. Jack, Heath, J Dog on the boards. Back in a few. Yeah, you have to also look at that Las Vegas explosion inside that Tesla. What do they call Cybertruck or vehicle? They had um, gas canisters stuffed inside that vehicle to make the explosion bigger. These are all basic terrorist tactics. It was outside a Trump hotel in Vegas, and with juxtaposed with what happened in New Orleans in the French Quarter on Bourbon Street, one would think that there's got to be some loose or real connection. The other concerning thing this morning for especially people in New Orleans, but maybe beyond, because of what happened to Vegas, is the FBI is saying this morning they do not believe that the terrorist in the New Orleans terror attack, 15 dead, more in the hospital, acted alone. Thinks there was a cop. They think there are accomplices out there. So this is going to be an active investigation today, and that is all with the backdrop of this afternoon's game at 4, the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. The Fighting Irish and Notre Dame taking on Georgia, a major college football game that was postponed from last evening till this afternoon. And that's all happening as we get going here. We're going to hear from some of our regular contributors this morning, but tomorrow in Washington, as you recall from our shows earlier in the week before New Year's, the break yesterday, that new members of Congress, going to be sworn in tomorrow, and Speaker Johnson is trying to secure or hold on to his speaker's role with the vote tomorrow. And there's going to be now Johnson does have the support of President-elect Donald Trump. You could see that on election night. Johnson was up on stage with him down in their headquarters in Florida. Johnson's it's a very tight House majority, and it's probably one of the tightest in nearly, I think, a century. Because you remember some of these appointments that Trump has made have depleted the Republican ranks in the House, so it's a very tight margin, and they have a lot coming up very quickly in January. You're going to have the Trump administration come in, and right after the inauguration, which I don't know, they didn't time it this way, J-Dog. I don't mean to compare the two. Might coincide with that evening, the college football championship, but just in a few weeks in January, you're going to have the inauguration, and the Trump team moves in, and they're going to try and move an agenda, and some of this will be through Congress as quickly as they can. So the speaker tomorrow is a very important day, at least in Washington, even though January 3rd on a Friday, a few people are paying attention. So we'll keep you posted. All right, some of the other news talk happening again. Looks like a windy Thursday for you here locally. Wind gusts are going to be felt out there. We had a pretty balmy, warm stretch, which really started coming out of the weekend, this past weekend into New Year's. We did get some rain yesterday and, of course, on Monday, but not a bad break. And hopefully you had a good one, whatever you were doing, and in terms of the holidays. Hopefully you enjoyed your break. And it's interesting with the week to week. A lot of people have been off for more than a week. It feels like 10 days. So we'll keep you posted on some of the news talk. But we've been here for you, and we appreciate you tuning in. We're going to be having some of our regular contributors today, but again, the interesting thing, interesting thing about this period now now that we're officially into January, one day in, so welcome to January 2nd, is the transition. You have Kelly Ayotte, who's going to be coming in as governor of New Hampshire. You have some new leadership in Concord. And then, of course, the transition and Joe Biden on the way out, as they say. Joe Biden on the way out. And in the middle of all this was the passing of former President Jimmy Carter, 100 years old, and you'll see some of that happening. But over the next few weeks, there's a ton of stuff happening, mainly in the nation's capital, and you'll see it here in Concord at the State House as well for those folks who are involved locally. But in the nation's capital, you're going to have the Biden administration, the Biden team leaving the White House, Trump coming in. You'll be seeing some of the procedural stuff as we get going, including the Congress being sworn in tomorrow, the new Congress tomorrow, and finally Joe Biden moving on. And I don't know what it was interesting on the Fox News network this morning, our new affiliate, when they were talking about the reaction to the terror attack in New Orleans, as well as the one in Las Vegas outside of the Trump Hotel. The first quote they had was from Donald Trump. Trump issuing an very strong warning and a very strong statement about terrorism, domestic, terrorist in this country, shaking America. They had they had the quote from Trump first in the news, which I thought was interesting. The president elect. They had the quote from Trump, and then a minute or two later, they had a statement from Joe Biden, the current president, who's basically becoming about as lame duck as you could imagine. Recently, over the holidays, I think he was in St. Croix vacationing, but Joe Biden, the media, pretty much already going to Trump on the major stuff. And it's interesting. I shared with you over Thanksgiving a buddy of mine who was in London, England, and this was in Thanksgiving. So it's like a few weeks after the election, November 5th, and he was there on a financial services annual conference he goes to. And he said the people there, when they were talking about the American election of Trump winning the White House, they already thought, based on the news, they thought Trump was already in the White House after November 5th. They thought he was like already there, and that Biden was already gone based on the world perception that Trump is the person coming in. Trump is the one with the power. Trump's in charge. But even with this attack in New Orleans, the national media is quoting Trump first and Biden second, even though Biden's still in there. And of course, the Justice Department, the FBI, still part of this administration. And they are saying that they do not believe that this suspect acted alone in New Orleans. Typical MO we're seeing now, rented truck. That truck was owned by someone else, I think, in Texas. There's a online uh, marketplace where you can rent a vehicle, not from like a car dealer, an Airbnb rental house rented by the New Orleans terrorist suspect. 15 people dead. So the FBI is trying to retrace the steps, probably looking at any connections to see who the other suspects were. They're already saying this morning they're fairly convinced, or they're not fairly. They're convinced that that he did not act alone. And we'll keep you posted, and we'll tell you what else is happening out there. But there's a lot going on, and again, the Sugar Bowl is set to play this afternoon. That's Georgia Notre Dame in New Orleans. And J Dog reminded me earlier, New Orleans is the home of the upcoming big game in the NFL, which will be what, later in February, right? Yeah, I know. So now that Sugar Bowl, even though with some people, including the Louisiana Attorney General, not agreeing with the governor there, that she thinks they should postpone the game even more. Governor feeling that they have to show that they can handle the security and let people know it's safe to come and visit New Orleans. And I guess I get both points. But J Dog, that's this afternoon, 4 o'clock our time, Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame, Georgia. But are there some other games today and tomorrow as well, bowl games, or is that the plan for college? Yeah. Now, this may not. It has this kind of brings back more New England connection here for you, but that the terrorist attack in New Orleans, believe it or not, is the deadliest in the United States since the what happened in Lewiston, Maine. And 15 people dead. The authorities are now looking at records and other information about the suspect. Obviously radicalized, had an ISIS flag in his vehicle. And if you know anything about ISIS, that's their MO, is to kill Americans. Then, but you have to look at Las Vegas as well. There were fireworks, gas tanks, camping fuel, all packed into that Tesla cyber attack outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. So this is a pretty massive national investigation, and I think that you're going to find several. I think what they're going to. I'm not trying to predict anything here in the law enforcement. I think you're going to see a domestic network of radicalized ISIS terrorists, even if they're U.S. citizens. I think they're going to unravel a network of terrorists based on Vegas, what the attack efforts were in New Orleans. Now, whether or not these were all just targeted as New Year's Eve, New Year's Day terrorist attacks, I'm not sure, but I think eventually there's probably going to be a network of terrorists locally that they will hopefully round up. And tax slayer. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Now, whenever we have stories like this, I always think it's helpful, at least I do it. You can do this yourself, just search, go to, New Orleans television news media, and there's a Fox 8, they have that, that kind of the New Orleans Saints, what do you call it? The emblem or whatever, Fox 8 News. Yeah, the what's that, J-Dog? Yeah, Fox 8 News, local first. This is some of the stories. Um They've identified more of the victims, 15 dead, more in the hospital. The Islamic State inspired driver. This is a second story in New Orleans. TV, local Fox 8, Channel 8. Islamic State inspired driver expressed desire to kill before the deadly New Orleans rampage, coming from the federal officials, or it says President Biden, but FBI. New Orleans officials concede that the terrorists defeated their French Quarter safety plan for New Year's Eve. So, they have an article on what the Islamic State is, and it's ironic that you just saw the recent toppling of Assad in Syria, but if you recall, just to give you a little bit of background or recent history, under President Trump, the first term, they had the civil war going on in Syria for a long time, and this is where Assad, who's now been kicked out of his country and living, I guess, in some I don't know apartment in Russia. We'll see how long that lasts. He basically was accused of using, chemical weapons to kill his own people during it was a brutal I mean, they were finding all these torture devices, these concrete presses where they would, he'd just kill his victims, anyone that, crossed his path when he was running, head of Syria, but in the middle of their civil war, ISIS really flourished as a new wing or derivative of fundamental Islamic, radical extremist terrorism beyond Al Qaeda, beyond the Taliban. You had ISIS, and ISIS stronghold was in Syria, ironically or truthfully. Communications, financially, they ISIS took advantage of the mess in Syria to kind of make that their stronghold until the first administration. Trump turned up the heat and the good guys went in and we pretty much dismantled their communications and their financing, their network, but they've never gone away. And ISIS has been, kind of out there. And this is all complicated because in the Middle East, you have Tehran and Iran, funding, whether it's coming from, proxy nations or Hamas, Hezbollah, but ISIS is probably the most extreme form of which is just for lack of a better way to put it, probably the most extreme form of the Islamic State, known as ISIS, is basically Islamic extreme terrorists. But ISIS is probably the worst of the worst in terms of violence. Remember, they were just when Syria, they were going to in different communities, they were killing Christians, just slaughtering, beheading, raping, just burning. The ISIS is unbelievable in terms of evil, and the the FBI recovered the ISIS, the black flag that you've seen in the Middle East on like pickup trucks or vehicles over in the Middle East. And you also, but it's all, I'm not a terrorist expert, but you look at Al Qaeda, you look at Taliban, the derivative of what the Taliban in Afghanistan, but the more extreme parts, ISIS. But you also have to look at Tehran, the funding of these terror groups, even if they're proxy terrorist groups. But Syria is a real bad hotspot of this, and the investigation might go all the way back. But the question I think they're looking for is there a domestic network of ISIS sympathizers, ISIS organized. Islamic State is their official. You can read about them on this New Orleans site of what their history is. But is there a network in this country of ISIS domestic terrorists, of which the New Orleans suspect terrorist, he's a terrorist who's dead, or what happened in Vegas with the Tesla, the Cybertruck explosion outside of the Trump Hotel. But the FBI is recovering more information that points to this kind of a network out of the truck from that suspect. The investigation is expected to look at, in part, at any support or inspiration that the driver, his last name is Jabbar, may have had drawn from the part of the Middle East I just spoke about, any connections to them, any financial support, but obviously radicalized. And there's at least 19 affiliated groups of ISIS around the world. I don't know if you knew that. There's 19, doesn't give me much comfort, nor should it give you that much comfort, but there are 19 affiliated ISIS terrorist groups around the world. And they do not believe that he was acting alone. Mere hours before the attack, Jabbar was posting videos on a social media site indicating that he was inspired, that he was, he was part of the Islamic State, ISIS, and we will see where it all goes. But the Islamic State's also known, as I said, ISIS, but really their strongholds were Iraq and Syria. I told you the background in Syria. It began as a splinter group from Al Qaeda, which was you look all the way back to Osama bin Laden, but basically the leader of ISIS, basically Syria is when they really get a stronghold, and we've done a lot to dismantle them. But what the problem is, once we've broken up their stronghold, you have all these derivative groups, up to 19 globally, and it looks like we have a group here now in the United States. Well, more on this and a lot more. Sugar Bowl is set to play this afternoon. We'll get back to some local news talk. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. J-Dog on the boards, Jack Heath, 6 Hour Studios, back in a flash. All right, we are back. J-Dog on this Thursday morning. Breezy one locally. We're going to have some wind gusts, and some parts will be up to 40 miles per hour today. Clear day, but windy and gusty. The brother of the terrorist suspect, who's now dead in New Orleans, said that his brother was radicalized at an early age, converted to Islam at an early age, and became radicalized. So the brother out of Beaumont, Texas, saying that his brother had become radicalized, especially in recent years. And, I when you look at what the Trump Hotel in Vegas, that Tesla cyber attack explosion, as an act of terror. And you look at what happened in New Orleans, you wonder. And the FBI already saying this morning that they do not believe that they're saying beyond that. They're saying that the suspect in New Orleans, a terror suspect, did not act alone, that he had accomplices. So we'll get into this as we get going. Hopefully they've put they kind of got something around this or some leads to stop or prevent any further attacks, because that's what you worry about, right? I mean, if you remember 9/11 way back, it wasn't just one, it was they had planned two or three. So you worry about that. And there's even debate within New Orleans on whether or not they should have the Sugar Bowl this afternoon at 4 o'clock. J Dog said our time, that will be Georgia Notre Dame this afternoon live in New Orleans, an area they know how to have big football games. They're going to have the biggest NFL game next month there. But this afternoon, coming off of really early New Year's Eve morning or New Year's Eve day, I think it was 3 something in the morning. Was it 3:45? It was after 3 a.m. when this truck plowed into the people. 15 are dead, more in the hospital. So it's only hours after that, but it looks like they are going to have that game this afternoon. There seems to be a little bit of a rift between the Louisiana Attorney General and the governor. We started our show this morning with a clip from the Louisiana governor saying they have to show folks in New Orleans and beyond that they can, come there safely and securely. But it's pretty scary what happened. So the game, all eyes will be on New Orleans this afternoon, not just for a good football game in terms of competitive game with New Orleans in New Orleans between Georgia and Notre Dame. The eyes, you look at J Dog said probably upwards of 70,000 people inside, but another 20 or 30, probably over 100,000 people in and around that area that have come from all over the country to see their two teams compete in the midst of this backdrop. And I imagine the security will be very intense in terms of the area, but it's not just the stadium, it's the whole area of New Orleans, because that's a pretty social area in downtown New Orleans, as we know from Bourbon Street and the French Quarter, as they call it. So more on this becomes available here throughout the day and top of our Fox News at top of each hour in updates on the investigation. And it's now a national investigation as we get going. It's interesting. I don't know about you, but, when people, we have this society now that when we get, bored or addicted, we'll look at these things in our hand that pose as phones now and look at news and things around the world, videos, Instagram, TikTok. But is it just me, or because no one has and people don't have anything else to do over the holidays? I don't know about you. Are you tired of seeing like shots of celebrities in places like the Caribbean, running around the beach in their swimsuits, whether it's DiCaprio and his girlfriend or I mean, it's like all they have to do over the holidays is show us pictures of celebrities on vacation, on an island somewhere. Do you care? I don't really care. I saw more images and videos of so and so and even Giselle, Tom Brady's ex, who's expecting a child. Video of her. You got DiCaprio on the beach. I mean, is that all they get to do? And over the holidays is show us pictures of celebrities that have nothing else to do but basically go to beautiful beaches, and good for them. Good for them. No, all more power to you. But I'll tell you one thing: some of these celebrities are the same celebrities I could give a what on what they think politically. I'm so tired of the hypocrisy in Hollywood and a lot of these elite celebrities. They are unbelievable. I mean, again, he's a great actor. I don't take this away from him, DiCaprio, but they have their own private jets, and they have their big boats, and a lot of that is run on fossil fuel. Last time I checked, and then they kind of pontificate to me and you and us about climate change and politics. The one thing I hope November 5th showed is no one gives a damn. No one really cares what a Hollywood celebrity thinks politically speaking. No one really cares what a Hollywood celebrity thinks politically. No one gives a damn. I haven't heard from Robert De Niro. Have you? Has anyone done a wellness check on Robert De Niro? I know he's getting older, the actor. I wish him well too, but I mean, talk about politically nuts. I mean, this is maybe I don't know if he's up in Toronto or not getting his condo, but we'll see where it goes. All right, as we get going tomorrow, we'll have in the top of the 10 more from Washington, because they're swearing in the new Congress tomorrow, which is happening pretty quickly. The reason why that matters is House Speaker Mike Johnson is trying to, with a very, very thin majority, in fact, it might be the thinnest we've seen in a century, is hoping that in that first vote or so that he can maintain and become the speaker of the new Congress, but it's all getting official tomorrow as we get going. Now, the Sugar Bowl is going to be a dominant story today. New Orleans security is probably going to be, this term unprecedented, but it's not just the security you see that keep people safe. It's going to be monitoring the social media networks for any clues or information like they have with the New Orleans terrorist suspect, where he went on social media basically broadcasting that he was going to kill people on New Year's Eve. So they're going to be looking really beyond New Orleans, but certainly in New Orleans, it's quite a scene to see the security as the players who've been there, because they postponed the game from last night, from Notre Dame and Georgia, getting some practice in as we speak. And they're now, J-Dog, live. I'm seeing images on one of the monitors here of the players showing up just in, the sweatpants, the sweatshirt, just basically the casual workout wear to get, pregame gear to start getting loosened up, because this game's coming up this afternoon. But we'll have more on that and a whole lot more, plus some pretty exciting football games yesterday. Ohio State, Manchester, New Hampshire's own Ryan Day. It looks like he's holding on to his job for a while. Ohio State now into the semifinals. They'll be taking on Texas, the Longhorns, who got that win in overtime over Arizona. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a few. All right, welcome back. J-Dog, you were saying you don't really like this 12-game college playoff. You think it's going to dilute the top teams. But I got to tell you, there were so many bowl games that it was hard to get a sense on. You always wondered if who the national champ, if they really were the national champ. Like the years Alabama was winning it, was this team better? At least there's some sense of a playoff here. Well, I mean, the NFL goes right into February. The one thing you shouldn't like, the one thing you shouldn't like is baseball starting and going as long. The baseball season is, in my opinion, painfully long. Mm-hmm. I know. I know. Like when they have those games like in Fenway, and it's, usually you get like a late sleet or snowstorm in March, you're freezing people with their ski parkers just to say, well, psychologically, people get excited when they see that truck leave, you know, to go down like for the spring training from Fenway. Fort Myers, yeah. No, I agree. I know. But that's how we survive, right? The great escape, the great escape. I mean, this is I was saying to my significant other yesterday, the day before, fun thing about this time of year, other than family and holidays, now that we're through them, whew, phew, I'll come back to that. There's just something always good sporting event. Tonight, Bruins Rangers. Yeah, the Winter Classic wasn't that great of a game, but it was fun to watch. Blues. But you got good NFL playoff stuff coming up the last weekend. You got college football. You turn around. I mean, I got to tell you, J Dog. I guess it's technically Arizona State, but Texas. I couldn't take my eyes off that game. The second in the fourth quarter, it really looked like Texas was just going to dominate and run away with that thing, and then all of a sudden, a couple of plays later, and the Arizona State was right back in it into overtime. That was exciting. I know. They Yeah, and they could win. I didn't know Boise State was what, 3rd seed? So guess what? Penn State, that's why I kinda like this thing. It feels like they got a real playoff going, but we'll see. Mhm, 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 mhm. Mhm. Hey, did I hear that, what was this from you or someone who's pretty much in the know that, you mentioned Pete Carroll? Is he rumored to come back into the, NFL? That's what I heard. I read something. What's he now, like mid-70s? Well, I guess you can run for president, you could be almost 80, who. No, he's an energetic person. I mean, with him chewing gum, I can always picture him chewing gum on the sidelines. He can't sit still. He's got as much energy as I know. No, he's very energetic guy. Hey, I think he got screwed over, but speaking of former coaches, do you think Gruden ever comes back, John Gruden? What? Really? Well, if Pete Carroll can, why couldn't Gruden? Well, I'm just saying, how long is that going to continue? Is that pretty much permanent for him? Okay. All right. Listen, I want to, speaking of done, that's a good way to put it, J Doc. Done. Medium well. Done. What about Washington? Tomorrow, the new Congress will have that top of the 10 being sworn in Washington. So the Congress officially tomorrow, they're going to vote on House Speaker. Very, very, very thin majority. Republican House for Mike Johnson. So they'll have that vote tomorrow. He's trying to get enough done to get one vote, hopefully, and take a sigh of breath. But look at some of the characters in Congress. I mean, oh my goodness. I hope they move on. I mean, are we going to continue to see the likes of Nancy Pelosi? I mean, is McConnell done? Mitch McConnell? I mean, he's having blackout moments. Chuck Schumer probably won't go away. But look at some of these people that have been down there forever. And it's one thing that I think the pundits nationally or the writers and talkers and thinkers don't point out. But there's several problems with Joe Biden. Several. It's going to be candid here, okay? Jack Heath, J-Dog on the board, 6-hour studio, 603-228-2080 on this Thursday. Welcome to January, 2 days in. There are a lot of problems with Joe Biden. And a lot of people say his age and his, mental capacity declining rapidly. But you know what? Shame on all these people. They're the same ones that told us that he was fine, and there was all us that were seeing things that he was fine. He wasn't stumbling and bumbling. You know what? Shame on you, because you know who you are. And a lot of the folks were right around him in the White House, and a lot of folks were in national newsrooms in mainstream media nationally. Shame on you. But Joe Biden is going out as the least popular, the strongest disapproval rating, or if you want to put it this way, the weakest approval rating of any president leaving term in the last almost 2 decades. Okay, so Joe Biden is going to be at best a political afterthought in history. Now, I don't know if he's best remembered 10 years from now, because they all worry about legacy of pardoning his son Hunter Biden, dropping out of being forced out of the race to run, opening the door for Kamala Harris. I don't know what Biden's going to be remembered for. I don't. Between you and me, I don't think it will be the Inflation Reduction Act. I don't think he'll be remembered for that one. I may be wrong. But one problem with Joe Biden was he tried to be like, gee golly gee, the back patting ice cream cone regular person. Talk about a professional politician. His entire adult life, he's been in Washington, either as a United States senator, presidential candidate, vice president. He's a complete professional politician. His whole career, he's a complete professional politician. None of these people have ever created a private sector job or company. I mean, they've been in Washington their entire adult life. And wouldn't it be refreshing if we could kind of thin the ranks and get some of these people like Biden and Pelosi to finally go to the porch and just sit there and tell us how great you were? Seriously. The problem in Washington is we have too many professional politicians. It would be really refreshing this year in 2025 if we could see fewer professional politicians in Washington. All right, 10 o'clock hour coming up. Hey, Google, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. Gusty, windy Thursday for you as we get going. Jade. That's right. And we are going to see that Sugar Bowl in New Orleans after the terrorism attack. Sugar Bowl this afternoon in New Orleans, the big game there in the NFL next month. But this afternoon, 4 o'clock, Georgia, Notre Dame. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. Back in a moment.